My name is Nate, and what the hell was that? I found myself with some expendable time today, and so I decided to go and see a movie. Now, I didn't have any kind of particular movie in mind. I didn't really even know what was out. So I went ahead and I looked up show times at the theater that I intended on going to, and I see a movie called Fall. I did see a trailer for this at some point, and I thought, wow, this movie looks like it sucks. And this movie sucks. It really sucks. So while I'm recording this, like I said, I saw this today. So this is still in theaters, and I've never seen the film. But in a way, I have definitely seen this film before. And I'll explain what I mean by that after I get into the plot. But yeah, this is a recycled movie. I think one of the things that makes it worse is that there's no like realistic setup for this movie. There's not some kind of real life thing that you might be going to do when inexplicably disaster strikes and then you're in this horrible situation. This is 100% a movie about a really stupid decision that of course goes wrong, and furthermore, the characters seem to do almost everything in their power to make it even worse for themselves. Well, anyway, let me just explain this movie to you so you don't have to go see it. So it starts off pretty straightforward. There's a couple and their friend, and they're going rock climbing. And what do you know? Something happens, and the guy in the couple, his name is Dan, he ends up falling, and they try to save him, but they don't, and he dies. And it's very traumatizing, as I'm sure you could possibly imagine. Then we cut to some amount of time later, and the lady in this couple, whose name is Becky, is at a bar just drinking herself to death. She leaves this bar, and her dad happens to be outside, and he says, hey, your husband was a piece of shit, sorry to tell you, but regardless of that, you need to move on with your life. You can't keep living like this. And she basically just says, fuck you, Dad, and just leaves. She goes home. It's not looking good for her. She's making some pretty tough decisions. Then she gets a call from a friend and happens to open her door. It's that same friend who was mountain climbing with them earlier, and her name is Hunter. So Hunter more or less says, hey, your dad called me, and I gather that you're in a pretty rough spot, seeing that your husband's dead. So I figure, why don't you and I go and climb this really tall decommissioned TV tower for my YouTube channel, and we can think about your dead husband. And Hunter tells Becky that they could even take his ashes, because he was cremated, and spread them on top of the decommissioned TV tower, because I guess that's something he would want. At first, Becky's not really into the idea. She obviously is very traumatized at the thought of climbing things, and tells her no. But then a flip switches. Is that the right way? A switch flips. Out of nowhere, a switch flips, and she says, you know what, actually, I think we'll do that. And then Becky has somewhat of a dreamlike flashback, where she's laying in bed with Dan. And she says to him, I love you. But he doesn't say I love you back, and she notes that. But he does do this like tapping thing, where he like taps on her side, first 1 time, then 4 times, and then 3 times. And then he explains this as 1, 4, 3, I love you. And then the dream turns into a nightmare where there's blood in the sheets and, my husband's dead! So now Becky and Hunter go to where this decommissioned TV tower is, which it's in like the middle of the desert. And I guess they stop at a motel or something, not really important. And they stop at a diner as well, where they have this really weird interaction with the waitress where Becky asks to charge her phone. The waitress says, no, electricity is not free. To which then Hunter is like, I have this really cool trick, let me show you. And then she takes the light bulb out of the lamp that is at the table, and then she takes Becky's charger and she puts the prongs into the light fixture. Also, I would like to stress you should not do this to any impressionable audience that might watch this. So she puts the prongs of the charger into the light fixture, and there you go, it charges the phone. I can't possibly imagine how this is going to come back up. So then they get to the tower, and they start climbing it, and I mean, they really might as well have just been taking hammers and like breaking shit as they were climbing, because the thing is actively falling apart. And then on top of that, they're just doing stupid shit that keeps breaking it. Like Hunter at one point, to tease Becky, is like rocking the ladder that they're on. Despite all the tomfoolery and shenanigans, they make it up to the top. They spread Dan's ashes, and Hunter makes a vlog of sorts for her YouTube channel, and they do very reckless things to get cool footage, including, but not limited to, hanging off of the platform that they're on with one hand, while a drone that they brought scans around and gets some footage. And in this whole kerfuffle, what the fuck happens? So now that they've gotten their footage and they've spread their ashes, they decide to start climbing down. And Becky and Hunter this whole time have been connected by a rope, I guess in case one of them falls so that they both die? I don't know. I guess it's a rock climbing thing. I don't rock climb. But the ladder falls as Becky is going down. And thankfully they do have this rope, so she just dangles and falls a bit, and they're able to bring her back up. Becky makes her way back up to the platform, and during her fall, she cut up her leg pretty bad. On top of this, they have no cell reception. They probably should have climbed a really tall cell tower instead. Now, unfortunately, their bag, which had their food, their water, and the drone that I mentioned, ends up falling and landing on a satellite that's below them, but is too far out of reach. Fortunately, there is an emergency box that's welded to the tower that has a flare and some binoculars. So they get the impression that maybe they just don't have reception because of how high they are or because of some interference with the tower itself. So what they do is Hunter types out a message to her followers that basically says, hey, we're on this big famous tower and we have no cell reception. Please call 911, we're stuck. And so she goes to post that and then attach the phone to a rope, lowering it inch by inch as far as they can, and hoping that they can get enough reception that it will post. So they try that, and it doesn't work. So next they decide that maybe they can drop the phone to the ground where it will either get enough reception to post their message for help, or somebody will find it. So they take one of Hunter's shoes, and they pad it with anything they can find, socks, bras, all that, and they drop it off the tower. It drops something like 2,000 feet and lands on the ground, and it shatters despite their protective padding. So there happens to be this dude who's just walking around at this time, and he doesn't notice that the phone fell. But he's walking a dog who does seem kind of interested. So they decide to do whatever they can to get his attention. They're yelling and hollering. They take Becky's shoes and throw them, and they just can't get this guy's attention, unfortunately. So Hunter uses the binoculars, and there was an RV that they saw pretty far out at some point, but they kind of assumed it was abandoned. It was just sitting here. So now they deduce that this guy that they just saw and another guy who's at the RV are there together. So they decide they're going to shoot their flare to get their attention, but they're going to wait until nightfall so that way they'll actually notice. So while they're waiting, Becky takes out her phone and is reminiscing on videos of her wedding with Dan. And she notices in these videos that Hunter was at her wedding as her maid of honor, and she seems pretty bummed in these videos. But there's no time to ponder that, because now it's dark and it's time to shoot the flare. So they shoot the flare into the sky, and guess what? These guys actually see it, and they start heading their direction. So the girls think that this is their escape. They finally made it, and they're going to survive. The two dudes find their car and just decide to steal their shit. So now night is here, and they have no new prospects of how they're going to get off of this tower or alert people that they need help. They're both kind of dozing off and catching each other so that they don't fall off of this platform, and eventually Hunter says, if one of us falls, we fall with the cell phone. Some time goes by and they're just, doing whatever they can to pass the time and figure out what they're going to do, when Becky notices that on the foot that no longer has a shoe for Hunter, there's a tattoo on her heel. Now this tattoo has 3 numbers on it, 1, 4, and 3, which if you don't remember, that was Dan's code for saying I love you. So Becky immediately puts together that Hunter and Dan had been hooking up. She confronts her about this, and immediately Hunter starts to apologize. And she says that her guilt is the reason why when Dan died, she just kind of disappeared. Becky takes off her wedding ring, and I don't know what the hell she does with it, but she does keep on Dan's wedding ring that she keeps on a necklace on her neck for some reason. An alarm goes off on Becky's phone, and she says that that means it's been 24 hours since they dropped the other phone. So there's probably not any help coming from that. The two of them, starting to succumb to dehydration, decide that they need to figure out some way to get the bag that's stuck on that satellite. Based on their experiment with the phone earlier, Hunter thinks that the rope is long enough for her to get down and reach the bag. So Hunter ties herself to this rope and gets ready to start going down the tower. And she says she's sorry and is weirdly kind of passive-aggressive to Becky, as if she's upset that Becky is upset that her friend betrayed her. She goes all the way down the rope and it's just out of reach. So she detaches herself from this rope, does some swinging, and ends up jumping and landing on the satellite, getting the bag. Also, there's this stupid thing that happens twice in the movie where, because they're at such immense heights, to lessen the fear, they think, oh, well, we'll sing nursery rhymes to keep our mind off of the incredulous heights that we're at. Yet, the two times that this happens in the movie, they do Ring Around the Rosies, which, of course, has We All Fall Down, and Humpty Dumpty, which he fell off the wall, which is just so stupid. They're singing, and they're like, we all fall down. Ah, I'm falling, no! So she grabs like a selfie stick from the bag, and she uses that to grab a hold of the rope that's dangling just out of reach from her jump. And with that, she's able to connect the selfie stick and the bag onto the rope. She then jumps onto the bag, and then starts to climb the rope as Becky, up at the top of the tower, starts to pull the rope up. So Hunter climbs all the way to the top of the rope, and she's just about to climb to the platform of the tower when she slips and falls. And then after some very suspenseful framing, we learn that she didn't fall all the way, and she caught herself at the end of the rope with the bag, but in doing so, she hurt her hands very badly and can't climb up the rope. So it's up to Becky to pull her up. Becky manages to pull her up, and then they both sit there and talk about how happy they are that they're not dead. Now with the bag on the platform, they root through it, and they find a piece of paper as well as some eyeliner. And with those two things, they write a message that will be put on the drone and sent to the motel that's not too far out to hopefully alert somebody of their disposition. They start flying the drone, and it gets a couple hundred feet away, but then the battery starts to die. So they quickly turn it back around, and it just barely makes it back after a very dangerous catch. So now they're up at the top of the tower with the drone that's dead and a charger, but no way to charge it. Night comes yet again, and Becky wakes up in pitch blackness. Pitch blackness, is that a way to say it? Becky finds herself in the pitch black, and Hunter is nowhere to be found. My God, how could this possibly have happened? Vultures keep flying at her, but then she notices that she's not alone. Hunter, in fact, is laying on the platform. She looks over and sees that Hunter's body is being picked at by vultures. Except, no it isn't, because it was an ever so tasteful dream sequence. Hunter is not only alive, but she has an idea. Do you remember her neat little charging trick with the light bulb? Well, there's a light that flashes at the top of this tower, but there's a pole that you would have to climb. There's no ladder or anything, just a pole. You would have to climb 30 feet up to get to the light bulb. Becky starts climbing up while Hunter sits on the platform and sings Cherry Pie as a form of encouragement, because there was a video that we saw earlier where Becky is pole dancing to the song Cherry Pie. She makes it all the way up and takes the light bulb off, but finds that the prongs for the charger aren't long enough to actually touch the conductive metal. Hunter yells that she's going to need some kind of metal to bridge the gap, so she uses that wedding ring that she's still wearing at Dan's. But their problems aren't over yet, because Becky has to hold herself there long enough to keep the thing charging, keep all the contacts there, and meanwhile, a vulture has decided to start attacking her. But it doesn't matter because she ends up staying up long enough to get a full charge and then climbs back down. So they need to wait a few hours for the motel to be busy enough that it's likely that someone's going to find their drone and their note, so they sit there and wait for a couple hours to pass. In the meantime, Becky realizes that she was kind of an asshole to her dad. The time comes and they start flying the drone, and it keeps going and going, and it's getting closer and closer to this motel. And just when it's right across the street, when you think that it might make it, a semi-truck comes by and hits it. The driver, unfortunately, also takes no notice to the broken drone in the street. Becky and Hunter sit there defeated while a vulture perches on the top of the pole. Becky and Hunter start to discuss their next move. Hunter starts to say things that seem kind of contradictory. Like she says that her other shoe that's on her foot isn't up there with them. It's actually down there. However, we learn that Hunter actually isn't up there with her. It turns out that when she fell, she didn't catch the end of the rope. She just fucking died. So Hunter fell on top of the satellite that the bag was on and unfortunately died. And Becky has been so delirious that she just imagined that Hunter was with her the whole time. At this point, she starts to record a heartfelt apology to her father because she thinks that she's really not going to make it. And her video apology ends with a thunderclap and a cut to black. We cut back to Becky's lifeless body on top of this platform at the top of the tower. A vulture comes down and decides to start getting at the remains. It starts to take one peck at the wound at her leg, and then we find out that she's actually faking it, and she grabs the vulture by the neck and beats it to death. Being so desperate, she eats the meat from the vulture and gets the strength to go on. Now having the confidence that she needs to keep going, she takes the rope from earlier and ties it in a rock climbing style. I don't know what you call that. I don't rock climb. And she climbs down to Hunter's dead body on the satellite. There's a vulture there that's picking at Hunter's body, but with one alpha-like stare, Becky's able to scare it off. She says her final goodbye to Hunter, and she takes Hunter's shoe. She puts the phone inside the shoe and fulfills the one promise that they had made earlier, that if one of them falls, the phone goes with them. She puts the shoe inside of the vulture wound that was left in Hunter's body and pushes her off the tower. We then see Becky's dad race towards the tower where police have already arrived. He gets out of his car and he sees a body bag at the base of the tower, and he just can't believe it. Luckily, he doesn't have to though, because that's Hunter's body and Becky is right there ready to see him. She says she loves him, they reconcile, and then the movie ends while a stupid voiceover says something about how you should live life to the fullest. Now, like I said, I saw this movie for the first time today, but I've seen this movie before. And I've seen this movie before because this movie is 47 Meters Down. You know that shark movie from 2017 with the cool poster? This movie is like literally the same thing as 47 Meters Down, but instead of underwater and needing air to survive, they are in the air, needing water to survive. And they sub the sharks with vultures. They even both have this like twist ending where things aren't as they seem because the main character has become delirious. They just literally like recycled another bad movie and then made another bad movie that got a slightly better critical reception. See, this movie kind of rides like a weird line for me because I think it was a really bad movie. But I'm still debating whether I think it was entertaining enough to be a good movie in a sense. I would say widely this movie is extremely boring, but the first like 15 minutes where they start climbing this tower, or maybe it's even after that, there's a really stupidly long intro. But whenever they start climbing up this tower, it really is just so comedic how they just are so inept and keep breaking things and clearly doing stuff that are going to make their lives way harder. Well, anyway, I rate this movie a out of. If you like this video, consider subscribing and maybe donating to our Patreon. My name is Nate and I'm just half of What the Hell Was That. Me and my friend Mike run this channel and we do podcasts where we talk about movies. We just started doing watch-alongs and I'm looking to start doing other media-related content. So if there's anything that you want me to cover or talk about, please leave a comment below and thanks for watching.